Hello everyone, and welcome back to Daily English Podcast. I'm so happy you're here today. Whether you're listening while driving, walking, exercising, working, studying, or relaxing after a long day, thank you for choosing to spend this time with me. Today's episode is about something that has fascinated people for generations. Why do some people seem to achieve extraordinary things while others remain stuck, even when they work just as hard? Is it talent? Luck? Money? Or is it something much deeper? Today, we're going to explore how successful people think differently and why changing your mindset may be the most important investment you ever make. Before we begin, I'd love to hear from you. When you hear the word success, what does it mean to you? Is it peace of mind? Financial freedom? A happy family? Share your answer in the comments below. I genuinely enjoy reading your comments, and your ideas often inspire future episodes. Have you ever looked at someone who has achieved exactly what you want to achieve, and wondered, how did they do it? It is so easy to look at a successful entrepreneur, a brilliant artist, a dedicated athlete, or even a friend who has a wonderfully peaceful life, and assume they have a secret advantage. We tell ourselves that they must be smarter than us. We think they were born with a special talent, or maybe they just got lucky. But what if the biggest difference between successful and unsuccessful people isn't ability, but perspective? What if the habits you admire are actually the result of a completely different way of thinking? What if success begins long before anyone notices your achievements? These are big questions. And today, we are going to explore the answers. But I want to warn you, the way successful people think is rarely what we see in movies. It is not about waking up at 3 in the morning and shouting at yourself in the mirror. It is not about never feeling tired or never making mistakes. In fact, later on, we'll discover why intelligence alone rarely predicts success. There is one habit nearly every successful person develops, even though few people talk about it, and we are going to unpack exactly what that is. Let's start with a story. I want to tell you about two young men, David and Thomas. They both started working at the same medium-sized marketing company on the exact same day. They were both in their 20s, both had university degrees, and both were very eager to prove themselves. In their first month, the manager gave them both a difficult project. They had to design a new advertising campaign for a difficult client. Both David and Thomas worked late. They both drank too much coffee. They both tried their absolute best. But when they presented their ideas to the client hated both of them. The client was harsh, critical, and frankly, a little bit rude. Here is where the difference begins. Thomas walked out of that meeting feeling crushed. His internal thoughts were loud and painful. He thought, I am not good at this. I'm not creative enough. Maybe this was the wrong career choice for me. The manager is going to fire me. When he went home that night, he watched television to forget about the bad day. The next week, when a new challenging project came up, Thomas quietly avoided it. He didn't want to feel that embarrassment again. David walked out of the exact same meeting. He also felt terrible. Successful people still feel disappointment, they are human, just like you and me. But David's internal conversation was completely different. Instead of saying, I am not good at this, David asked himself, what did the client hate about it? How can I do this differently next time? What do I need to learn that I don't know yet? David went to his manager the next day and said, that didn't go well. Can we sit down for 10 minutes? I want you to tell me exactly where my thinking was wrong so I can fix it. This simple story highlights one of the most powerful psychological concepts in the world. It is a concept developed by a famous psychologist named Carol Dweck, and it's called the growth mindset. If you have a fixed mindset, like Thomas, you believe that your abilities, your intelligence, and your talents are fixed. You believe you are born with a certain amount of smarts, and that is it. So, when you fail, you think the failure means you are broken. You think, I failed, therefore I am a failure. But if you have a growth mindset, like David, you believe that your abilities can be developed through hard work, good strategies, and input from others. You don't think you are born knowing everything. So, when you fail, you don't think, I am a failure. You think, I haven't figured this out yet. That little word, yet, is magical. I don't speak English perfectly, yet. I don't know how to start a business, yet. I haven't found a job I love, yet. How often do you use the word yet in your own life? Have you ever stopped yourself from trying something new because you were afraid of looking foolish? You're certainly not alone. It is a very natural human fear. We want to look competent. We want to look smart. But successful people are willing to look foolish for a little while in order to become masterfully skilled later. This brings us to a beautiful realization about how successful people view failure. Ordinary thinking says failure is the opposite of success. We think there is a road, and it goes in two directions. One way leads to success, and the other way leads to failure. But people who achieve great things think differently. They understand that failure is not the opposite of success, it is a required part of the journey to success. Failure is just data. It is information. Let me tell you about a woman named Elena. Elena is an immigrant. She moved to an English-speaking country 5 years ago with very little money. She wanted to open a small restaurant sharing her home country's traditional food. Now, imagine her situation. She is in a new culture. She doesn't speak the language perfectly. She doesn't understand the complex tax laws or business regulations. When she first tried to sign a lease for a small building, she was rejected. The landlord said she didn't have enough financial history. She went to a bank to ask for a small loan, and they said no. A person with an ordinary mindset would probably say, the universe is telling me to stop. This is too hard. I'm just an immigrant, nobody will give me a chance. And we would all understand if she gave up. We would feel sympathy for her. But Elena thought differently. Every time she got a no, she politely asked, "Can you explain to me what I need to change so you can say yes next time?" When the bank said her business plan wasn't clear, she didn't get angry. She went to a free community library, borrowed books on business planning, and rewrote it. She asked strangers for help translating her ideas into natural English. She wasn't emotionally destroyed by the rejections because she didn't take them personally. She saw each rejection as a stepping stone. A no was just a puzzle she had to solve. Today, Elena has 3 very successful restaurants. She didn't succeed because she had an easy life. She succeeded because she changed the way she thought about the obstacles in front of her. Take a moment and think about your own life. Think back to a moment when a failure or a rejection actually taught you something valuable. Maybe you failed an exam, and it forced you to completely change the way you study. Maybe you went through a painful breakup, and it taught you what you truly need in a relationship. I'd love to hear your experience in the comments. What is one failure in your past that actually turned out to be a great lesson? As you think about that, I want to introduce another huge difference in how successful people think. It's about time. Specifically, it's about what psychologists call delayed gratification. We live in a world that wants everything immediately. If we want food, we can open an app on our phone, and someone will deliver it to our door in 20 minutes. If we want entertainment, we have millions of videos in our pocket. We want quick money, quick weight loss, quick success, and quick fluency in a new language. But anything truly valuable in life takes time. It requires you to sacrifice what you want right now for what you want most in the future. Let's look at a typical office worker. We'll call him James. James wants to be promoted to a senior manager position. But James also loves his free time. When it hits 5 p.m., James immediately shuts his laptop, goes home, and plays video games for 4 hours. Now, there is absolutely nothing wrong with video games or relaxing. Rest is important. But James complains every single week that he isn't moving forward in his career. He blames his boss. He blames the economy. He wants the reward of a promotion, but he wants the immediate gratification of playing games every night. On the other desk is Sarah. Sarah also loves relaxing. Her brain craves comfort just as much as James's brain does. But Sarah practices long-term thinking. She promises herself that for just 1 hour every evening, before she watches TV or relaxes, she will take an online course in data analytics, a skill she knows her company desperately needs. It's not easy. After a long day of work, sitting down to study data feels terrible. Her brain whispers, just skip today. One day won't matter. But Sarah understands delayed gratification. She is willing to feel a little bit of discomfort today to build a massive advantage for herself next year. 2 years later, when a senior position opens up, who do you think gets the job? James might call it luck. He might say, Sarah is just the boss's favorite. But it wasn't luck. It was the invisible habit of choosing the long-term goal over the short-term comfort. Close your eyes for a second, if you are in a safe place to do so. Imagine yourself 5 years from now. Picture where you live, the people around you, the job you have, and the English skills you possess. Now, ask yourself, what is one small thing I need to do today, that I don't want to do, that will make that future a reality? Perhaps you've underestimated yourself. Maybe you've thought you just lack the willpower or the motivation to do difficult things. But here is a secret that successful people know: motivation is mostly a myth. We are often told that if we want to achieve something great, we need to feel motivated. We watch an inspiring video, we feel a sudden burst of energy, and we say, tomorrow, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m., run 10 kilometers, eat only vegetables, and study for 3 hours. And what happens? The alarm rings at 5 a.m. It's cold. You're tired. The motivation is completely gone. You hit the snooze button and go back to sleep. Then you wake up feeling guilty. Successful people do not rely on motivation. Motivation is like an emotion, it comes and goes. You can't control it. Instead of motivation, successful people build systems and rely on consistency. They focus on discipline instead of waiting to feel inspired. Consider the story of a young writer named Maya. Maya wanted to write a novel. For years, she waited for the perfect moment to write. She waited until she felt inspired. She waited until she had a free weekend. But those moments rarely came, and after 3 years, she had only written 2 chapters. One day, she realized her thinking was wrong. She decided to change her approach. She made a new rule: I will write 200 words every single day, no matter what. 200 words is very little. It's just a short paragraph. It takes maybe 15 minutes. Some days, she felt wonderfully inspired and wrote 1,000 words. But on the days she felt sick, tired, stressed, or unmotivated, she still sat down and wrote her 200 words. She gave herself permission to write bad words, boring words, or silly words. But she had to write. By removing the pressure to be perfect and focusing only on the small, consistent action, Maya finished her first book in less than a year. This is the power of compounding. Have you ever wondered how people become incredibly fluent in a foreign language? They don't do it by studying for 10 hours in one day and then ignoring it for a month. They do it by listening to a podcast like this one for 30 minutes every single day, while they wash dishes or ride the bus. Small, seemingly insignificant actions, repeated consistently, create extraordinary results. Great lives are created through ordinary actions repeated consistently. We'll return to this idea because it changes the way you think about your daily routine forever, but first, I want to ask you a question. What is one small habit you are trying to build right now? Let me know in the comments. Is it drinking more water? Reading 10 pages a day? Practicing your English speaking for 5 minutes? Whatever it is, I am cheering for you. Let's transition to a slightly deeper, and perhaps more challenging, psychological concept. This is where we separate the dreamers from the high achievers. It is about how we explain the events in our lives. In psychology, this is known as the locus of control. Imagine a circle. Inside the circle are things you can control: your attitude, your effort, your reactions, your words, and your decisions. Outside the circle are things you cannot control: the weather, the economy, other people's opinions, traffic, or where you were born. People who struggle in life tend to have an external locus of control. They focus all their energy and attention on the outside of the circle. When things go wrong, they play the victim. They make excuses. They say, "I didn't get the job because the interviewer didn't like me. I can't save money because the economy is terrible. I am angry because the traffic was bad." While these things might be true and frustrating, focusing on them makes you completely powerless. You cannot change the economy today. You cannot control the traffic. If your happiness and success depend on things outside of your control, you will always be waiting for the world to be perfect before you can succeed. Successful people operate with an internal locus of control. They practice something called extreme ownership. Even when a situation is not completely their fault, they look for the part of it they can control, and they take responsibility for it. Let's look at an example. Imagine a father, Marcus, who is trying to balance a demanding corporate job with raising two young children. His boss gives him too much work, and his children are often chaotic and loud at home. It is a very stressful situation. An external thinker would say, "My boss is unfair. My kids are too wild. I have no time for myself, and my life is miserable. It's not my fault." This way of thinking leads to bitterness and depression. Marcus, however, decides to take extreme ownership. He cannot change his boss's personality, and kids will always be kids. But he asks himself, "What is inside my circle of control?" He realizes he can control how he communicates with his boss. He schedules a meeting and professionally says, "I can do Project A or Project B with excellence, but I cannot do both this week." Which one is the priority? He also realizes he can control his morning routine. Instead of waking up at the same time as his noisy kids and feeling immediately stressed, he starts waking up 30 minutes earlier. He uses those 30 minutes just to drink his coffee in silence and read a book. Marcus didn't change the world. He didn't get a new job or new children. But by taking responsibility for his own reactions and his own schedule, he changed his entire experience of life. He stopped being a victim and started being a creator. Have you ever caught yourself making an excuse that you knew wasn't entirely true? It's okay, we all do it. Our brains love excuses because excuses protect our ego. If it's the economy's fault, then I don't have to feel bad about my lack of savings. But successful people realize that protecting their ego is less important than making progress. They would rather face the uncomfortable truth that they need to work harder than live comfortably in a lie. This leads us directly into how successful thinkers handle criticism. Remember David, the designer from our first story who asked for feedback? Why was he able to do that? For many of us, criticism feels like a physical attack. If someone tells us our work is bad, our heart rate goes up, we feel defensive, and we want to fight back or run away. This is biological. But intellectually, we have to override this feeling. People with an extraordinary mindset possess something called cognitive flexibility. They can separate their personal identity from their work. If you criticize my essay, you are not criticizing my worth as a human being, you are just evaluating some ink on a page. There's a famous story about a young architect. She submitted a design for a massive new city library. The city council reviewed it and tore it apart. They said the windows were too small, the entrance was confusing, and the style was too modern. She could have been offended. She could have argued that they just didn't understand her artistic genius. Instead, she sat down, took out a notebook, and said, "Fascinating. Tell me more about why the entrance feels confusing to you. Walk me through your experience." She approached their criticism with deep curiosity. Curiosity is the ultimate antidote to defensiveness. You cannot be intensely curious and intensely angry at the same time. Try it sometime. The next time someone gives you negative feedback, instead of explaining why you are right, pause. Take a breath. And say, "That is an interesting perspective. Can you tell me more about why you see it that way?" This simple mental shift does two things. First, it calms the other person down, because they feel heard. Second, it often uncovers incredibly valuable information that you can use to improve. The architect took their feedback, revised her design to include both her artistic vision and their practical needs, and she ended up winning the contract. You're probably noticing a pattern here. The way successful people think is rarely about being the smartest person in the room. It is about emotional intelligence. It's about how you manage your fear, your ego, and your reactions under uncertainty. Let's talk about uncertainty for a moment, because this is where many people freeze. What do you do when you have to make a big decision, but you don't know what the outcome will be? Should you quit your safe job to start a risky business? Should you move to a new city? Should you ask that person out on a date? Most people are paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong choice. They overthink. They make lists of pros and cons, but they never take action. They stay in their comfort zone because the brain prefers a familiar misery over an unknown possibility. Successful people think about risk differently. They know that not making a decision is actually making a decision. Staying in a job you hate because you are afraid to leave is a choice. You are choosing the misery you know. When facing uncertainty, successful people don't try to guarantee a perfect outcome, because they know that's impossible. Instead, they ask themselves a powerful question: what is the worst-case scenario, and could I survive it? Let's imagine a man named Tom. Tom is 40 years old. He has worked as an accountant for 15 years, but he hates it. He has always dreamed of being a high school math teacher. But he is terrified to go back to university, take a pay cut, and start over. When Tom looks at his fear, he thinks, if I do this, I might run out of money. I might fail the exams. People will think I'm crazy. But when Tom learns to think differently, he analyzes the worst-case scenario objectively. He thinks, okay, if I go back to school and fail, what happens? I lose some time and money. I might have to go back to being an accountant. Will I die? No. Will I lose my family? No. Can I survive it? Yes. Then he asks the second, even more important question: what is the cost of doing nothing? The cost of doing nothing is spending the next 25 years of his life waking up every Monday morning dreading his job. The cost of doing nothing is a lifetime of regret. When Tom compares the temporary risk of trying against the guaranteed pain of a wasted life, the decision becomes much easier. The fear doesn't disappear, but it loses its power. He learns to act in spite of the fear. I'd love for you to participate in this thought experiment with me right now. Think about a decision you have been delaying. Maybe it's a small decision, or maybe it's a huge one. What is the fear that is holding you back? And more importantly, what is the cost of doing nothing? You don't have to share this in the comments if it's too personal, but just sit with that question for a moment. As you navigate these big life decisions, there is one more critical element to consider: your environment. Specifically, the people you surround yourself with. There is an old saying that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Psychological research supports this idea. It's called social contagion. We naturally and unconsciously adopt the habits, the vocabulary, the energy, and the mindsets of the people around us. If you spend all your time with people who gossip, complain about their problems, eat unhealthy food, and make excuses, it is almost impossible for you to remain positive, motivated, and disciplined. Your environment will drag you down to its level. It's often called the crab bucket mentality. If you put a single crab in a bucket, it can easily climb out. But if you put a dozen crabs in a bucket, whenever one tries to climb out, the others will reach up and pull it back down. Sometimes, the people we love are crabs in our bucket. They don't do it because they are evil, they do it because your growth makes them uncomfortable. When you decide to stop drinking alcohol every weekend so you can study English, your friends who want to party might mock you. They might say, "You're no fun anymore. Why are you working so hard?" Your discipline highlights their lack of discipline, and that makes them feel insecure. People who achieve extraordinary success are very careful about who gets their time and energy. They actively seek out people who are smarter, harder working, and more optimistic than they are. They want to be the least successful person in the room, because that means the room will pull them up. Think about your social circle. Do your friends talk about ideas, or do they talk about other people? Do they encourage your dreams, or do they tell you to be realistic and settle for less? Sometimes, the most difficult but necessary step to changing your mindset is quietly distancing yourself from negative environments. You don't have to be angry with them. You just have to love your future more than you love the comfort of fitting in with the wrong crowd. Has this ever happened to you? Have you ever had to change your friend group or your environment in order to grow? It can be a very lonely season of life, but it is often the bridge to a much better future. Let's pause and take a deep breath. We have covered a lot of deep emotional territory today. We've talked about the growth mindset, the power of yet, reframing failure as data, delayed gratification, building consistent systems instead of waiting for motivation, taking extreme ownership of our choices, leaning into curiosity when criticized, acting despite fear, and protecting our environment. These are not just motivational ideas. These are practical, everyday tools. But how do you actually start applying them today? How do you shift your mindset when you wake up tomorrow morning? I want to leave you with 3 practical mindset shifts that you can begin practicing immediately. First, change your self-talk from I have to I get to. Listen to how you speak to yourself. I have to go to work today. I have to study English. I have to cook dinner. This language creates a feeling of burden and slavery. It feels heavy. Now, change one word. I get to go to work today. Some people are desperately searching for a job. I get to study English. You have access to the internet, education, and a brain capable of learning new things. I get to cook dinner. You have food to eat and a family to feed. This tiny shift in language forces your brain to look for gratitude instead of misery. It is a game changer for your daily energy. Second, practice the October 10 rule when you feel overwhelmed. When something goes wrong and you feel stressed or angry, ask yourself, will this matter in 10 days? Will it matter in 10 months? Will it matter in 10 years? If someone cuts you off in traffic, you might be angry now. But will it matter in 10 days? No. So why let it ruin your entire afternoon? If you fail a small test, it might matter in 10 days, but will it matter in 10 years? Probably not. This rule helps you keep your perspective and saves your emotional energy for the things that truly matter. Third, focus on the process, not the prize. If your goal is to lose 10 kilograms, staring at the scale every morning will only make you miserable. The prize is the weight loss. The process is eating healthy food and exercising today. You cannot control the number on the scale today. You can only control what you put on your plate today. Fall in love with the process of becoming a healthy person. Fall in love with the daily habit of listening to English. The prize will naturally take care of itself. Picture yourself making just one of these small decisions differently every day. Imagine waking up tomorrow and, instead of complaining about the rain, simply saying, I get to experience another day. Imagine facing a difficult task at work and, instead of feeling afraid of failure, saying, I wonder what I can learn from this. It might feel strange at first. Your old habits will try to pull you back. Your brain will tell you it's easier to just be negative. But if you persist, day by day, week by week, your entire reality will begin to shift. The way you view the world will change, and as a result, the way the world treats you will change. Success is not an accident. It is not reserved for a special group of lucky people. It is a way of operating in the world. It is built one decision at a time. It is created in the quiet moments when nobody is watching, when you choose to study instead of scrolling on your phone, when you choose to take a deep breath instead of yelling in anger, when you choose to try one more time after failing. You have immense power within you. The fact that you have listened to this entire conversation proves that you have the desire to grow, to learn, and to improve your life. Never forget that the way you think today shapes the life you build tomorrow. Don't worry about being perfect. Just focus on making progress, one small step at a time. If today's conversation inspired you, please give this video a like and subscribe to Daily English Podcast for more relaxing English listening practice and meaningful conversations about psychology, success, and everyday life. And before you go, I'd really love to hear from you. What's one way you're trying to think differently and grow this year? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone who's just beginning their own journey. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Take care of yourself. Keep learning. Keep growing. And I'll see you in the next episode of Daily English Podcast.